Good morning. Welcome back to the Crafty Author. My name is Anissa and welcome to my craft room. And today what we are going to be doing is putting the borders around our easy baby quilt that we've been making in the baby quilt series. So what I have gone and done already is I have chosen my border colors for the baby quilt. And so I've chosen this really cute pink, very pretty light pink, and also this light yellow. I know it probably looks a little darker than what it is, but it is light yellow. So what I'm going to do right now is I am preparing to iron these out. I have cut about a half a yard for the inner border of the baby quilt, which is going to leave me with more than enough. Okay, so I will have leftover, which is a good thing. And then this one, I haven't cut into it yet, but so with the pink, we're going to cut out 2 inches because we want the inner border to be 1.5 inches. And with this one, I am going to cut it at 4 inches because I want my border to be 3.5 inches on the outside of the baby quilt. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and iron these up, and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to cut them and show you how I do that. All right, so I've gone ahead and ironed out the pink, and we're going to go ahead and cut this, but I'm going to go ahead, this is already folded in half, and what I'm going to do is fold it in half again, because I prefer to cut it this way. It just makes it easier for me to do it this way. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cut off the edges that are over here. Let's see if I can get this a little bit more in camera. So just over here. So I'm just going to cut off probably about 1/4 inch of this fabric, but I want to make sure I have everything in there just to straighten the edge. And that's done. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this over a tad, and I'm going to line it up on my mat right here on the line. And I'm going to make sure that this part is also lined up evenly because I want to make sure I get a nice even cut. And then I'm just going to count over 2 inches because we want this to be 1.5. I'm just going to line my ruler up with my lines again. I'm going to give it a cut, and you should have something that looks like this. Should be a long strip, if you can pull it open. So that's what I have. And I know that this strip is long enough for the baby quilt, but I will show you how I do this, how I measure this in just a moment. Okay, so how I measure this on a baby quilt. There are a couple of rules of thought on this. I'm going to give you my opinion on how I do this, okay? Some people will do exact measurements and measure out the quilt, and they will cut the strips exactly to that size. I, on the other hand, do not do it that way. I like to come over to my quilt, and I like to lay this strip across, and I want to see if it will fit. And as you can see, it's going to fit just fine, okay? This is a very long piece. Also, when you are piecing a border, you want to make sure that you go, if you start on one end, you're going to do the other end. You don't start here and then go down and do it on this side, So you want to stay consistent. You either start here and here, adding your borders, or you start here and you start here. I do mine from top to bottom. It's just the way that I do things. You can do it whichever way works for you. And then I will put my, what am I trying to say here? And then I'll put my borders on the opposite side. It helps the blanket to stay really neat and really precise. And then what I do is I when I measure this piece out, I want to make sure that I am going to have a long enough piece to go down on the long side. And so by doing this, I can see if I'm going to have enough, and I do. So I will have to cut a little bit off the ends when I'm done sewing it, but I'm okay with that. So I'm gonna go and cut 2 more of these little strips, and then I will start, I'll show you how to cut the bigger pieces, and then we'll start sewing this together. Now we're going to cut our bigger strips. And again, I really do, this is about 2 yards. I like to fold my fabric in half so that I have one continuous piece. And the way that I'm going to do that is this, I'm going to fold it. Let's see if I'm going to have enough here. We may have to do this differently. Yes, we should have plenty. All right, but I'm going to move this over so I'm not on a folded edge. I'm going to line up down here along my line again to make sure I'm straight. I'm going to use a bigger ruler. I'm going to go ahead and cut off this edge here that's yucky. It has a selvage on it. And then I'm going to cut 4 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm cutting through multiple layers, but then you'll have a strip that looks like this. And I do believe this is in 2 different pieces, but if we needed to, we could sew them together to make them longer. Now, this is a very long piece, and so I know that this is going to fit the little quilt. So I've already cut 2 pieces here, so I'm going to set them aside. They're both the same size. So now I only need to cut 1 more. So 2 cuts is all that takes. And this is a very easy way of cutting. And it's not so hard on your hands that it makes it difficult. So I've got my, now I've got my 4 pieces for my quilt, from my large border. All right, so we're gonna stitch this on. We're gonna do it with a 1/4 inch seam. And I am gonna start this up at the top just a little bit past, just to make sure that that I can even out that edge. There we go. We're just gonna start sewing, 1/4 inch. And I'm just gonna keep this flat against the edge, the raw edge of the quilt. Try to keep my quilt nice and flat as I'm sewing this. Do not pull on the borders, you will stretch them. You need to stop every few stitches. I usually use my hand as a marker as to where I need to stop. So I stop right where my fingers are, and then I readjust the fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to cut this just to even up the end. This will make it easier. Let me show you. This will make it easier when we go to place the larger borders on. So all you're going to do is you're going to take the leftover piece here, your leftover border piece that you just sewed on, and you're just going to press it down. You're going to slide a pair of scissors in that crease, and you're just going to cut it. And now it's perfectly flush. I think I need a scrap bucket over here. I don't have one. That's kind of surprising. I'm going to do the same to this piece here that we started with, had a little extra in it. And this one's a little bit trickier, but I'm going to just slide my scissors in there and give it a slice. Then I'm going to take the quilt and this, and I'm going to give it a press, and I'm going to press it towards that way. So I'm just going to finger press it. And this will help it when I go to iron it. It'll make it a little easier for the ironing. And I just use the pad of my finger. Sometimes I use my fingernail. Just depends. Okay, and that's what we've got. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish putting the pink border around, and then we'll do the larger border. Okay, so I have the little pink borders sewn on, and now I'm going to attach the yellow ones, which would be our larger border. And like I said, I already know that these are going to fit because this border is huge. It's very long. So no problems there. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to put it down on top of the raw edge of my pink to the raw edge of my yellow. And we're going to start sewing. All right, here's what it looks like with the borders on. And I did pin it a little crooked on my my quilt wall, so but that's what it looks like. And it looks really great. And I've gone ahead and I've already pressed the seams. And so everything is looking really good. So our next step will be to get this ready for quilting. So we don't want to square up the quilt until we are ready to quilt it. What I meant to say was, we don't square up the quilt until after we've quilted it. So the next thing that we'll be working on is making the the backing for the quilt. And this is where I'm gonna show you how to incorporate some of the scraps that we've had that came from this quilt. We're gonna put some of these on the back. So we're just gonna make a cute little design. And then we will sandwich it and pin it, and then we will quilt it. And then we'll just go through that whole process. And so we'll do it slowly so that everybody can get the hang of it, because I know it can be a bit overwhelming to do this. But once you get the hang of it, it goes really fast, and it's not as hard as you think. So anyway, that's it for me today. I hope you found this tutorial helpful on how to put the borders on. If you'd like to follow me on social media, the links are down below in the description box. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps my channel to be seen, and it helps me to bring you more great content. And keep on crafting. And you guys have a wonderful weekend. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.